I'd like to hand the stage over to Rosemary, who's our guest speaker tonight, and author of Zoom 88. I've forgotten the rest of the title. She can fill that in. So if we give an invisible round of applause and welcome Rosemary.
Thank you very much. Hello, everyone. My name is Rosemary Wiseman. I'm delighted to be with you all today. And thank you, Sarah, very much for all the work you've put in to organise this event. This afternoon, well, it is in the UK anyway, afternoon, I'm going to introduce you to a very powerful and effective technique which can improve the quality of your musical life and potentially the lives of those who you work with or those that you know as well. I'll also be sharing other practical ideas for helping you or your students manage performance anxiety. I've been a hypnotherapy and NLP practitioner since 1999 and became a thought field therapy practitioner in 2001. Thought field therapy, TFT, has been in use for over 40 years. It involves tapping acupressure points in a specific order to eliminate distress, such as anxiety and some other things which I'm going to introduce you today to. It can also be used easily and speedily within a music lesson or in preparation for a performance. As well as helping clients with a wide range of problems, I've used TFT to enhance my work as a music teacher and performer. I play and teach a variety of instruments, mainly piano, cello, flute and recorder. I'm also a singing and vocal coach. My work in the area of musical performance enhancement has enabled me to get great insights into the effectiveness of TFT as I treat people in this situation when they're actually experiencing their issue. I also have the opportunity to see people on a regular basis being a music teacher and with some clients. And this enables me to get long-term follow-up of the techniques used. So today is going to be very practical and informal. There will be an opportunity for you to ask questions later on, or obviously feel free if there is something that you really want to ask at the time, put it in the chat. I'm going to give you a demonstration, first of all, of TFT, that's thoughtful therapy, and I'm going to introduce you to this tapping technique. It is very extraordinary. It works whether you believe it or not. So if you haven't done it before, feel free to join in. And even if you have done it before, feel free to join in as well during the session. The procedures are all going to be included in my book, Zoom 88, How to Be, and here's the title, by the way, How to Be Calmer and Improve Your Music Making. So all the instructions will be there. So for right now, you can just go along with me and join in and experience whatever you experience at the time. If you need to, you can always email me after the session today as well. And there will be contacts details. Again, I'll mention, but it's rosemarywiseman@gmail.com. So, you know, just relax and enjoy what you're going to experience now. Now, at the back of Zoom 88, as I said, there are all the procedures for what I'm going to take you through now. They are particularly related to musical performance. Of course, they can be used for many other things as well. The way that we use TFT is to actually tune in with what our issue is, what's bothering us at the time. So for the purposes of this session, if you want to actually work along with a particular something that's bothering you or something you're feeling a little bit anxious about, I suggest you take a small thing, not a great huge thing, because sometimes with bigger things there's layers. So just take something that maybe right now is bothering you a little bit, either something that happened or something in the future, or even just right now, what you're thinking about right now, maybe a particular performance. These thoughts we call the thought fields. They're the concerns that you might have right now. So you tune in with them, rather like a radio station, tuning in with them. And you gauge on, we have a scale, a subjective units of distress scale. So 10 is the most it's bothering you and 1 is the least. Now, these thought fields can vary a lot. They may be something, your concerns may be how you're going to get to the venue that you're going to be performing in, or it could be something like because of the situation with the pandemic, for example, you haven't been performing for a while and you've got to get back to performing again. So there may be various issues that crop up within that. Anybody can have any anxiety at any time. So you're going to get some skills today. So even if you're feeling fine and suddenly something happens that you're unprepared for, you can be that much more prepared today. So tuning in with something right now, it could be that you're feeling absolutely calm and you're looking forward to your performance. In that case, you can visualize just by tuning in right now with visualizing. There's a sequence for visualizing a performance going well, peak performance. So that sequence is tapping underneath the arm and the collarbone. And I suggest you start any tapping, which we can do right now together. Just start any tapping with a PR spot, which is the side of the hand. It's on this fleshy spot there at the side of the hand. And just do that 10 to 20 times. You don't really need to count. You can top yourself up as much as you want when you want. It's quite safe to use that. So it's a good idea to do that to clear any blocks that you've got. And it also helps with reversal of concepts or self-sabotaging behavior. And there's several different treatments for all that, of course, but we're just going to use the side of the hand now. Okay, so tuning in with whatever's bothering you right now, 10's the most, 1's the least, give you an idea. I'm going to take you through the sequence for anxiety, stress, or fear. It's the same sequence, interestingly enough. So we'll focus on that anxiety right now and tap that underneath your eye, and you're always doing it right unless I tell you otherwise. Okay, so those of you who I can see are absolutely doing it fine. Okay, then tap underneath your arm and your collarbone. Now, some people do ask me, can I tap with both hands? Oh, that's absolutely fine. Can I do it with my other hand? That's absolutely fine as well. It's quite allowing, and you can use it in your own way, providing you follow the specific sequences that we're using. So after you've done that short sequence, you can just tune in once again and see if any of those numbers have decreased a bit and gone down a bit. You feel a little bit more comfortable in some kind of way. And now, providing that you have gone down a little bit, we can do what's called the 9 gamut sequence. So you locate the gamut spot, which is at the back of your hand, in between the 4th and 5th fingers. And you just tap that continuously, and then keep your head still, and then just follow my instructions. So it's close your eyes, open your eyes. By the way, if you've got your sound on, you're welcome to join in singing with me. So we'll just do that once again. If you don't mind your voice being heard on the recording and not the picture, please join in. So it's close your eyes, open your eyes, look down to the right, look down to the right, left. That's right. I can hear a couple of you joining in there. And then circle your eyes one way around the clock. Go all the way around the clock one way as you keep tapping your gamut spot. And then go round the other way around the clock with your eyes as you keep tapping continuously your gamut spot. And then we're going to go back to the sequence again. Now, the one we've chosen today is anxiety. So we're going back to underneath the eye, underneath the arm, and collarbone. Now, with performance, sometimes you do get past traumas being involved. So I am just going to show you the sequence for past traumas. So if you've had some experience within your music making, perhaps when something didn't go quite right and you're remembering back to that, we just add a very simple spot, which is the eyebrow, the start of the eyebrow. Just tap that one now so you know how to do it. It's very useful for any shocks, traumas, or upsets. Even just tapping that spot. But we're going to go a bit more. We're going to go back to the same sequence as we did for anxiety. So that's how you know how to track for trauma. Eyebrow, underneath eye, underarm, collarbone. It can just be an upset of some sort. And then you would do the 9 gamut in the middle once again. So let's have another go at that 9 gamut. Close your eyes, open your eyes, look down to the right, look down to the left, circle eyes one way around the clock, circle eyes the other way, then hum, count, hum a little tune aloud, count to 5 aloud, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and hum aloud again. Just a little tune up and down, just so it's different notes. Okay, and then you rate your distress. Has it gone down a bit? Just notice how much more comfortable you're feeling now, or relaxed. Some changes. Sometimes people just find themselves letting out a nice breath, which is good, sign of things happening. And then what we're going to do is go back to that sequence, whatever you did. So if you did the anxiety sequence, just go back to doing that now. Under eye, underarm, collarbone. Or if you did the one for trauma, then you can do that one and go back and repeat that sequence once again. And dare I say it, if suddenly in the middle of a performance, like happened to me in a rehearsal quite recently when I went back to playing, all of a sudden I got a little pain, a little cramp. So behind my music stand, this is what I was doing. And I had told the conductor, if this was for pain actually, so just 50 times on your gamut spot can be if you've got a little pain. Okay. Now, as I said, all these instructions are available after the session today. So if you just come onto the call, you want to know how to do all this stuff, there'll be full details afterwards. So now just rate how you're feeling. And if you've come down to say 10 was the most, 1 was the least, and you've come down to about a 3 or below, then you can do what's called a floor to ceiling eye roll. And remember, if you're outside doing this, you can look up to the sky. Okay, but at the moment we're going to call it floor to ceiling eye roll. Tap the back of the hand, the gamut spot continuously, look down at the floor, and then roll your eyes up slowly towards the ceiling or the sky if you're outside. And then just finish off with the collarbone is a nice one to finish off with there as well. Okay, now there are lots of different sequences, very, very specific sequences for different things, for different thought fields, as it were. Any questions about this, anything you want to share, there's going to be a question and answer session later on today, so that you can ask anything you want to, and we can sort out anything afterwards. What we're going to do now is we're going to go straight on to what I'm going to call zooming in to a few different areas now. I'm going to give it a title, Calmer Performing. Okay, and there's one way, obviously, of managing that performance anxiety is to get yourself into a calm state. I'm going to share some more of my methods, ideas, and experiences in helping people to manage performance anxiety, which are included in my book, Zoom 88. For those of you who've just come on, it's called How to Be Calmer and Improve Your Music Making. And we're just going to take now some time in Zoom 1. Zoom 1 is my musical journey, where I share my experiences from starting off as really quite a happy, confident performer. And I'd been teaching for years, both privately and in teaching classes in schools, and enjoying performing in various different ways on my various different instruments. And then this is what happened to me. Now, it was in my 7th year teaching at a school that, unknown to anyone else, I suffered my first real experience of stage fright. Many musicians go through some form of this at some point in their musical career, and most keep it a secret if they possibly can. So thank you to anybody in the various chats and various groups that's actually shared their own experiences here. Now, my unfortunate experience did occur during an ordinary school assembly. I was playing a piano arrangement of Dance of the Nights from Prokofiev's ballet music for Romeo and Juliet, when all of a sudden my mind just went blank. I simply could not find the chords, which I'd experienced no trouble in playing only moments before. I thought I knew exactly what had triggered this. With some children in the hall losing their attention, I immediately doubted the quality of my own playing. The professional pianist who had come in to play to us the very same music earlier in the week was excellent. How could I possibly match up to him? Now, the one benefit of my own stage fright, from which I recovered so well using self-hypnosis, was that it has since given me a great insight into the performance anxiety of musicians and public speakers who I have been able to help since, adopting some important techniques that I learned at this time. My first chapter is actually called Legato or Slurred, and is about an unfortunate candidate who everything was going quite well apparently in his exam, and then something suddenly happened. The examiner confused him in some way by his language, and he got himself into such a terrible state he ended up on the street. And that was where I went out to kind of, if you like, rescue him and get him back, because he couldn't tell anybody really what had happened. And after doing some TFT, he was able to calm down and tell me actually what had happened. We got him back into the exam room and he continued his exam and passed. Now, I'm sure that there are many ways that we can avoid a lot of these performance traumas. And this is what I do highlight in various places in my book as to how we can do that. For a start, whose anxiety is it? Is it the performers? Is it the teacher, the student, or even the parent, you know, in that waiting room? And some child prodigies like Alma Deutscher will actually relate to the fact that Alma doesn't have the anxiety, she has no fear, but her mother does. So this can obviously in some cases transfer to the student, and in other cases not. So chapter 2 is theme and variations. I'm going to highlight 3 areas that I work with people. I have to find out what is actually bothering them, because it can be so many different things. And some of the things that bother people are those thoughts that are in the head. The most important thoughts that you ever have are the ones that you say to yourself. And so, A for affirmations. Affirmations are very useful to have a positive language in your head before you're going to perform, and even during a performance. And some people do ask me, how do you use TFT when you're in the middle of performance? Well, I get some people that don't wish to use TFT. They want to use other resources, and that's great. There are different ways to roam, and I encourage that. But this particular student, she was taking a grade 8 flute exam, and I was accompanying her, and it was not going well at all. And so at that moment, I wondered what to do, and I just thought of that PR spot actually. While I was playing the piano, I just thought of that in my mind, and for myself and for her. And the performance, strangely enough, instantly just turned around, and she went on to perform well for the rest of it and passed her exam. So there are different ways, such as affirmation. Now, E for energy. Okay, to perform well, you need lots of energy. I know of a very famous performer who used to sometimes make mistakes in performance in public venues like the Royal Festival Hall. But nobody cared because her communication was so good. But one particular performance, she used all her energy up in the afternoon, and she hadn't got enough energy for that evening concert, and it didn't go as well as it should have done. So energy is very important, and I look at ways that I can quickly help people to re-energize. Yes, the PR spot is one way, tapping another sequence, which I'm not going to go into today, but there are other sequences that we can use to re-energize very quickly. Also, they're very simple things like drinking water and making sure your diet's reasonable, and a few other ideas, which I do highlight in that section. Now, E for expectations. This is a really important one, because it's that language, what you're saying to yourself, about what you expect from yourself and what others expect from you, perhaps in that performance. And we're going to come into a little bit later about talking about mistakes, but it could be about mistakes, but it might be something else. You know, it might be something that you just want to be perfect, or it's that you want to give your best performance. So I'm going to be talking to you a little bit more today about some ways that I help myself to give the best performance and the people that I work with. Now, chapter 9, slow is fast progress. In this chapter, I do highlight how to help people slow down, because slowing down is one way to feel calmer. And there's various ways that you can slow yourself down. And it can be very difficult for some people. They've got a lot of energy, and slowing themselves down might sound easy, but what is slow anyway? And whose slow is it? And I know that my piano teacher, who was a concert pianist, found great difficulty in slowing a particular student down. In fact, she had to stop teaching her because she just didn't know how to slow this student down. So I have to say I'm quite pleased so far. I haven't given up with anybody. That's not my style, those who know me. And some way we get there, even if it does take a while. Obviously, breathing is one of the most common ways that people talk about helping people to feel more relaxed, because you do need relaxed concentration before you go into a performance. So breathing techniques are very good. And shall we just have a go at that right now? Okay, just notice what your breathing rate is like just right now. And take a nice deep breath in through your nose and out through your mouth. Okay, now I do teach diaphragmatic breathing, which is a very successful way. I teach either just standing up, if I'm working with somebody like that, or ideally, if I can get them on the floor and within a certain situation, then we can help people to actually breathe properly and fully, because one of the reasons with anxiety is that you're probably hyperventilating, you're breathing shallow breathing, chest breathing. So one of the things I first learned, I was telling you what helped me when I first learned to get into calm states performing, was learning about breathing techniques. So this can be very helpful in slowing down and reducing that anxiety. Slow is calm. Now, obviously, when you're performing, you have to also be in an energized state, and you can do that. It won't stop you from bringing that energy on. In chapter 11, I talk about how to improve your practicing, and I have a particular method called, I call it the successipy, how to do successful music practice. And one of the first things, before I highlight the individual ingredients of this recipe, is to tell people that they need to get into a good state, manage their state. Now, that's easier said than done sometimes. You know, life's full of challenges and things happen. And again, we have to know what to sort of ignore on the day of a performance, and if we can ignore it, but sometimes it's not possible. Things happen. So how do we get into that good state? Well as we can, using the resources we've got, and all being well, I'm giving you today some more very powerful resources to explore afterwards, if you so wish to do so, and add them to your toolkit, as it were. Now, distractions can come into it as well. So you might be absolutely fine before the performance, but then something happens during it. And we have to cope somehow with what we're saying to ourselves, our expectation, manage ourselves, keep ourselves calm enough to carry on. And you might never have anxiety normally. I was talking to a musician the other day who was telling me that they're fine. Okay, they don't get anxiety, absolutely not. But they were in a situation where they were involved with another musician, and they had to do something that would mean that they had to actually get everybody else to play their music in the right time and right place. But they were a bit anxious about it. Now, of course, they had to manage that state, and that is so important when we're performing. So talking about mistakes, let's go on to chapter 12. I call it mistakes and expectations. And some of the most common causes of mistakes are due to performance anxiety or the fear of making mistakes. So it's a kind of circle here. That can be for many different reasons that this happens. So our resources become very important at this time. Resources for calmer and more expressive and enjoyable music making. That's what we need. Sometimes I invite students and clients I'm working with to actually make some mistakes. So we can explore what's underneath those mistakes. Is it just that they're anxious, or actually, is there something missing in their preparations? So let's assume for a moment that all the preparations have been done. We've explored those mistakes. Now it's time to perform and to stop thinking about getting the right notes. Because that's really what we need to do when we're performing. We need to let go of all that stuff about getting it right. Let go of that perfectionism and just go in the moment and do the very best that you can. So easier said than done for some people once again. Chapter 13 I actually called improving your performance. And you will hear many students, as I have no doubt, if you're a teacher, or even if you're students yourself, maybe you said this, I did it all right at home. And they get very frustrated about why they can't perform here in this moment. There is one sequence that I didn't show you before. I'm going to show it to you now about how you tap for when you get frustrated. And it's very quick and easy. So if you did it well at home and you didn't do it so well when you're actually performing for your teacher or in a performance, obviously for your teacher, you can stop and do a very quick tap, even just at the side of your instrument or holding your instrument or underneath that piano. I've seen it done before. Okay, tap the tiny finger, just the edge of the tiny finger, and then the collarbone. And that will relieve that anger or frustration often with yourself, that you can't perform as well as you know that you can, because after all, you did all your prep and it was all right at home when you were on your own, or wherever you were when you were by yourself. So now on to enjoying your musical performance. Now, sight reading is a big issue for a lot of people. And I've had some students in the past who spent all their 30 seconds of preparation for sight reading working out the first note. Okay, now there is a reason for this, and that is because they may not be reading correctly. And in the previous session that I did for Sarah, I did go into how the mnemonics that some people learn, like all cows eat grass and things like that, do slow people down. And of course, when they've suddenly got to find their place in the music, they do become quite anxious that they can find that place quickly, because they in fact can't find it quickly. So I've developed a system which I call the Rosemary Wiseman method. It's the keynotes method of learning to read music more quickly and speedily. And I highlight that in chapter 15, where I call the chapter Cows, Clefs and Keynotes. And some people really, unfortunately, do get stuck with those mnemonics. And I've been at many exam centres, and just before the exam, I chat to some other people, maybe who are not my own students, and they say, well, I'm a bit worried about my exam. And I say, well, what are you worried about? Well, I'm worried what happens if I stop and then I can't find my place. And then I look at their music sometimes, and I've seen, lots of finger numbers or letter names over all the notes. I call these markings we write on the music time savers. They're what musicians write, circles and numbers and things like that over the music. And when I see a proliferation of these, I know that the student has maybe learned possibly some rote method, copy me method, or they've been listening to the CD numerous times or something like that, or YouTube or something. And they've also been relying on finger numbers or letter names. And of course, their sight reading is impacting them now, because they can't suddenly read the music and start in different places if they need to. So that's another thing that can affect performance. Now, Zoom 3. I call these as we zoom into selected cases, These are really experiences of people that I've helped using particularly TFT, but also some other states have been managed by using a very good it's like a mindfulness technique, but it's a very, very powerful one. It's called This Brain is Having a Thought. And so some people that don't want to use TFT, I've found this very, very helpful as well. I just use TFT a lot because it's so quick and easy to do within a lesson. And yes, there are other layers sometimes, but we can address those gradually. So I began with a case of somebody I was accompanying years ago when I first started out, and she was a very good performer, and Rachel, her name is, and she was doing very, very well prior to coming into her exam room. And then she just fell to pieces and I didn't know what to do. And yeah, I shouldn't really have worried because her musicality shone through and she did go on to actually pass her exam. But it made me think, what could I do to help people before, during, and during even an exam? And I have come up with, even during an exam, some inventive ways of helping people as well as using tapping. And there are some stories about how I've used them in situation in an actual exam with an examiner. Just give me a minute or two to do some quick tapping with a student or a candidate so that the exam could continue. I do go into quite a lot of detail about my own experience of taking my grade 8 flute exam, all the preparations during the time when over years when I prepared for that. And I recount the story of how I did that and how I prepared myself. Now, I've talked about that word preparation because we know how important it is in keeping calm for a performance to actually know that you've done all your preparations. And but still, I wanted some more information. I was on the ski slopes just before my grade 5 flute exam, and I was waiting with my instructor. It was half term, and there was a big long queue, and I thought I'd pick his brains because he used to ski with an international team. So I asked him, can you give me some tips about your performance? And he just had one word: preparation. That was it. So I thought, okay, we've got another 25 minutes to wait in the queue. And we just talked about everything else, I think, because I just didn't know what to say after that, because, it's such an important part, preparation. We all know that sometimes things can get in the way with it. And my own experience here, I'm going to tell you that obviously I did use quite a bit of tapping and all sorts of other things, from massage and all various things, talking to people, talking it through with my teacher. And finally, I got in the exam room and managed to entrance the examiner and myself, I think. Let me just read a little quote from you, how my performance was that I felt on that day. I'm quite surprised that throughout the exam, my concerns I had experienced about breath control issues or getting clogged up with saliva during practice have simply not occurred. I am in a deep state of relaxation and my breathing is most comfortable. It is indeed a good feeling. I had rehearsed how to cover up my mistakes, and today I have covered them up much better than I did in practice performances. I'll highlight there something very important. Practice performances are really, really essential to iron out all these things. In general, I'm feeling that I have played the best I can at this point in time. What more can one want? So that's really what I'm, aiming to bring to you today, to give you some more resources that can help you to tap away those tensions. And one of the stories in this section in Zoom 3 is about a student I work with, that she would worry for weeks and weeks and weeks before even a lesson, never mind a performance. And remember, a music lesson is some sort of performance as well. And she got herself into such a state before her lessons, before she came to see me. And of course, I introduced her to how to tap away that tension and anxiety before any lesson or exams. And I filled in the gaps because there were some teaching gaps there. She hadn't learned a few things that she needed to learn. And once she recovered, she was able to go and perform much more comfortably for her exams, having cleared those traumas. Now, clearing traumas is something very important. I showed you before about the sequence for tapping for trauma. If you do have a performance trauma, it's really important to clear it as soon as possible so that when you go back into another performance situation, you have cleared that. Now, my vision in summary is that everything I've spoken about and demonstrated today will help us all get more enjoyment and pleasure from music making. So if you have any questions afterwards or in this session and also after the session, feel free to contact me through my website, which is rosemarywiseman.com. That's Rosemary Wiseman, WISEMAN.com. Or contact me by emailing me at rosemarywiseman@gmail.com. Now, I'd like to end this part of the session with a poem that was actually written by Angela Michaels, a client of mine, and this is really a homage, if you like, to Dr. Roger Callahan, who developed the tapping techniques. In fact, all tapping techniques you might hear about. TFT doesn't use words, okay? Roger Callahan realized that many years ago that it wasn't necessary, but there are various offshoots of tapping which do involve words and affirmations, but you don't need to use them. This is Happy Tappers, a poem by Angela Michaels. Happy tappers tap away any old time of night or day. They put their trust in TFT. That's short for thought-filled therapy. It gives you the tools that you can use to calm you down, to ease the blues. It gives you freedom from distress. It helps to conquer anxiousness. It helped me in a time of need to gain control, to plant new seeds. So thank you, Dr. Callahan, for developing your TFT. It helped to free my mind of knots, unwind some tapes, undo some blocks. This system, Dr. Callahan, shows me a way to say, I can. So I'd like to say thank you very much to everybody for listening and joining in, those who did. And I'm going to hand back to Sarah so we can take some questions. If anybody would like to ask anything.
Well, I have a couple. So unless someone wants to jump in before me, question one is, does it make a difference how long you tap for? Like when you demonstrate it, you like only tap like 2 times or 3 times and then here 3 times. And my next question is, why does the order matter?
Okay, first question. Tapping, each spot is about 5 times. And I say about, I never count it, okay? So it's interesting to notice that I did about 3. But some people I notice do feel that they want to do a bit for longer. And if they want to, that's fine. But it doesn't need to be, you don't need to sit there for half an hour of tapping, because it means you're probably on the wrong thought field, or you need some tips or advice how to manage that. So it's probably best to get in touch with a practitioner such as myself. Otherwise, it's the only spot that you do more is the PR spot, which is 10 to 20 times. And it's quite fine to use that more regularly for longer if you wish to. You just top yourself up as and when you need to. It shouldn't hurt, that's all. And you shouldn't, actually the person that introduced me to her mother was a concert pianist and also a hypnotherapist, and she became a thoughtful therapy practitioner. And the daughter actually who told me about her mum, she doesn't use the tapping herself, okay? But she did help somebody else by telling them how to tap this spot. And apparently they used it so much, they were actually hurting themselves because, you know, she wasn't a practitioner. She didn't know how to tell them. So that's the only person I've heard that's, you know, got a bit sore there from doing that. But everybody else is fine that I know about. So yeah, feel free to do that. And the second question you asked, Sarah, to go back to that second question. if you'd like to just remind us about that second question.
It was, why does the order matter?
The specific order. Okay, now Dr. Roger Callahan did take many, many years, probably about 20 years, to actually devise these sequences, the specific sequences. He worked them out so that they could work effectively and quickly. And this is one of the reasons why I can, for example, help people within a music lesson or in a situation where they've got to perform and go on stage in seconds. There's a story about Chris Tarrant, for example, was a TV presenter, and he was having trouble presenting. Something suddenly went wrong. He was a very good presenter, very, very good and very articulate. All of a sudden, he started messing up his words. So I showed him a quick sequence of tapping, and he was able to sort the problem out and go back onto stage, as it were, and continue the broadcasting. So the sequence does matter. There are other methods with words and affirmations I told you about. And these other methods sometimes are longer because they're like a one-size-fits-all. So they're not specialist sequences. There are a number of different sequences for frustration, I've showed you, for visualizing, these different sequences. And that is what makes thoughtful therapy, TFT, so very special. How we can get these changes so quickly in some cases, and in other cases where it's more complex, there are more layers.
And just one more thing. After the last time you presented on TFT, I went and did a bit of research and discovered that there's a lot of research into using TFT with children on the autistic spectrum in the middle of a meltdown. Is it the same application? Is it the same, or is it completely different, the application in that case?
Absolutely the same. And it's very interesting. Thank you for sharing that. I mean, I do teach myself a number of autistic students and also neurodiverse students with many different issues. Sometimes they're diagnosed, and by the way, and sometimes they're not diagnosed. Okay. So whatever symptom I'm presented with, it doesn't matter about the label to me. I would just, whatever's happening, I use the same techniques with if they're having some anxiety, and has been very effective using these techniques. Hi there.
Thank you, Rosemary. Well, I should say, if anyone's got a question, if you don't want to unmute, you're welcome to unmute and ask, or you can put it in the chat, and myself or Joe or someone, or I think Ray's here, can read it out, or Rosemary can read it out directly. So the floor is open.
Okay, this actually brings me back to my book launch, which is wonderful, a memory actually, because we had a little time for question and answers, and I think I was quite surprised at the silence at that moment. Obviously, I'd covered enough people needed to know at that time, but I think it was my editor of my book who was there, and he actually did ask a question, which I often get asked, which I'm going to and ask that same question now. Sometimes people do wonder why it's called Zoom 88. I'm just going to mention that it was the title was actually inspired by my mother, who was preparing for her grade 3 piano exam at the time, at the age of 88, and she used a magnifying glass to zoom in to her music there and enlarge the notation of her pieces. And so there's something about that in the book. You'll have to read the whole book, obviously, if you want to find out more about that story, and also about her story of what happened before she took her grade 3, actually, at the age of 88. So yeah, that's just one question I get asked quite a lot. So for those of you who are worried about speaking on the recording or anything like that, but by the way, public speaking is a very big thing for musicians as well. Many musicians find themselves having to speak in public, and it's one of the biggest fears. So if anybody wants to explore that fear. Can I just check with you, Sarah, are you actually going to be recording this part of the session?
Oh, I can stop it. That's a good idea, actually.